Bertone was one of the most important firms in cars in the 20th century. The most famous Lamborghini, the Miura, the Spada, the Urraco, the Countach. If you look how many models on the road and were dreamed all over the world were designed by Bertone, you have a very long list. You know, Bertone fate was the end of an era. It's not the fault of Bertone. But if you look at the very end, the biggest name everywhere in the world disappeared. An English writer created the word supercar to describe the Miura because it was so far ahead on everything else. Bertone took Marcello Gandini, that was the youngest designer that he had in his firm to create. So he was 25 as at the moment. So he created something that was simply outrageous. And the Miura became a symbol because it was the dream of a bunch of talented guys. Then in years they became the best in each one competence. But back then they were simply out from the school, young guys in love with cars, dreaming to create something amazing. Try to imagine today a 25 years old designing the Miura. Will be absolutely inconceivable. And that was the trademark of the style of Bertone. It was always a little bit over the top in a certain way, a little bit extreme, less traditional. And we see that most of his design age well. Mike Robinson was the last stylist that they had. He arrived when the company was already a big company, let's say, with a lot of interest in designing products, building cars, designing cars. And the very first project he was assigned was the Pandion, that was to create the cars to symbolize the 100 years of history of Alfa Romeo. So that was a shared project. Alfa Romeo asked Bertone to create something special. The Pandion, that still today is still considered one of the most beautiful prototype of the first 20 years of the 21st century.
The Nuccio Bertone was designed to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of Bertone. When you start thinking about how do you celebrate a 100-year anniversary, you're going to put a little bit of everything in that car, so do a potpourri. I think that it tilts his hat to the 70s, which is of this amazing Stratoses and Countaches, things like that in the Gandini period. Had a lot of fun with it, but the interesting thing is try to find a way of projecting 100 years with one gesture, and I thought it's not so easy.
All the car manufacturers today, they have inside their style center because they prefer to do this, because they need to have more control on what's going on. You have multinational companies. They have a worth, by economical point of view, that is incredible, but they lack one of the most beautiful aspects of the human brain, that is the fantasy, the dream. For sure, the Bertone that we know is lost forever. But I think that the history of Bertone was important enough to be remembered in a certain way because of the mark that he left in the car world in the 20th century. So I'm sure that will be for a long time people remembering Bertone or collecting pieces of the history of Bertone because it's an important part of history in the world.